The community in and around Laurel County has spent the past week shell-shocked as a manhunt continues for the man accused of opening fire at drivers on I-75. As of this show's taping on Friday, Joseph Couch remains at large. Kentucky does bar convicted felons from gun possession, but the state does not require a permit to purchase nor require registration of firearms or licensing of owners, and you're free to open or conceal carry without a permit within state lines. To some Second Amendment supporters, this is welcomed, but gun law advocates believe that Kentucky lawmakers don't take the subject seriously.
Making sure that we do a background check on all gun sales, making sure that we have a law in place that would be able to remove guns from people that we know are dangerous to themselves or others, having a secure storage law.
We know that things like waiting periods, in addition to creating an additional barrier for law-abiding citizens to exercise their Second Amendment rights, there is no evidence that they reduce crime or suicides or anything of that nature. So the evidence is not there, but even if it were, we have to uphold the Constitution.
A red flag bill by Republican lawmaker Whitney Westerfield was not given a vote this year. Senator Tichenor, I'll let you start the conversation here. We've been here before. We had a similar discussion on this program last week following the Georgia shooting. Shootings are not going to stop overnight. More than likely we'll be here again at some point. We just don't know when. Does something change? Can something change?
Can something change? Of course. Things change. I think as we look at the issue of gun control and we look at where do the statistics fall, the majority of crimes are committed by people who shouldn't have a gun anyways. They're criminals, they're accessing that gun. And then you have these crazy people like in Laurel County, which honestly, when I heard the news, I went to some dark places thinking about how horrific that could have turned out. And thankfully it wasn't as bad as apparently intended by the shooter. But we do need to address what's going on with people. What is triggering people to do this? Does that mean we take constitutional rights away from everybody else? No, we can't do that. We really can. Our Constitution's very clear in that. But we do need to address the mental health issues that are driving people to places where they feel the need to act out in this way in such a cruel and horrific manner that could have resulted in so many deaths. Representative
Herron, same question. Does something change? Can something change?
I mean, absolutely something can change, and it's a matter of political will. And I will agree with you, and I will agree with Representative Maddox, is that we have to be very careful about not infringing on people's Second Amendment rights. But what I do know is that just because you have a right to own and carry a weapon, it doesn't mean that there should not be things put into place. And I think that you see a plethora of different type of bills that we can do. People say it's a red flag bill or it's a safe storage. But what I know that is true, the mass shooting we had in Laurel County, there was a mass shooting in Floyd County 2 or 3 years ago where 3 officers lost their lives. Every day in Louisville, someone is being killed. Gun violence is happening. And so for me, it's a matter of how are we looking at all of these incidents, not in a silo, but looking at them holistically to find out what is happening. Is it mental health issues? Do we need to do more gun safety in certain communities? Do we need to do conflict resolution in other communities? I think that we can come up with solutions that is going to allow people to keep their guns. I am a gun owner. It's in my car right now. But I do think that we have to do something, and I do think that there are solutions. I have filed a bill to create an Office of Gun Violence Prevention, as you said, where we're looking at the data. We're understanding what are these different types. Is it inter-community violence? Is it violence between partners and spouses, husbands and wives? Is it kids getting a hold of firearms and accidentally shooting someone, or is it them committing suicide? We have to look at all of it in order for us to find the solution that is going to give us relief across the board.
We have a little less than a minute left here, and you both mentioned mental health, and so I want to ask this, how can we target that mental health support towards people who aren't necessarily seeking it or may not even think that they need it?
It's a great question.
It's a difficult one.
I mean, I think we have to normalize that we all as humans sometimes need mental health support. I mean, whether it's we're calling our friends and families or whether you have somebody professional, there are times that everybody gets stressed out. And what does that really mean and look like? I think another piece of legislation that we can do is have the same way that everyone gets one physical a year. Why don't we make sure that everyone through their insurance gets one mental health check a year?
All right. Representative Herron, thank you so much. Thank you both for your insight on this topic. We'll be right back after this.